So I want to first thank the subscribers that contributed their stories today. Their names will appear here or here, something like that. But before I start today's video, there is a brand new YouTuber I want you guys to check out. His name is Night Tales. I'll leave his link in the description below. Why I think you guys should check him out. He only has like 4 or 5 videos up right now, but I found his channel and then I watched a few of his videos. They don't have a lot of views, to be honest, but I feel like it kind of feels like me when I first started YouTube, because a lot of these videos, like there's one called Trash that it's kind of like an online diary kind of thing of like creepy occurrences, and it's like I feel like this person's writing his own stories and posting it on there. If you guys don't know, Horror Studio 1, when I first started YouTube, I wasn't doing true scary stories. That just kind of took off by itself, but I actually also wrote my own stories and narrated them as well on my YouTube channel back in the day in 2015. I have one called, I think what's Going Home. I don't even remember the name, man, but I wrote that story and it was like, as barely any views, but this Night Tales guy has a good voice and a good atmosphere going, kind of similar to mine, and yeah, go check him out. You don't have to subscribe, but if you like his content, please do. I feel like he's gonna be an up-and-coming YouTuber in the future. And yeah, he just feels like an old me for some reason, so if you want like a second Horror Studio 1, maybe he's gonna be the next Horror Studio 1, who knows. Anyways guys, without further ado, grab a blanket, turn off your lights for these Ouija stories part 2. I think something is following me. Hey Horror Studio 1, man, your videos are the best, and I've been a subscriber for 6 months now. I just want to tell a set of short stories that I kind of connect to one another. It does not matter if I can tell my story on one of your live streams, or you just read it out loud, but here's a summary of what happened. When I was 9 years old, I would chant and call for spirits as a game with 6 other friends. Most were older than me, oldest was 13. And we would hold hands, form a circle, and play a Ouija board-like game, where we would call a first spirit, and tell them to knock on something or do something, which did work sometimes, and creeped us all out. Maybe it was just my childhood imagination or something else, because my dad was a military. We moved around a lot. 2 years later, me, my sister, and my mom, we moved back into my home city because my dad was either in Germany or Afghanistan for his job. Now, my dad bought a condo from this place where they cut down some of the forest and put a set of buildings together. So where we moved was new. Weird incidences started happening there and it freaked us all out. Like one time, my remote control car actually moved by itself at about 2 a.m. in the morning and went all the way down the hallway. Some other stuff happened after that year when we moved to Germany, but if possible, I would like to save those for the live streams if I can join to tell my story. Keep up the great content. Ghosts everywhere we go. If you do actually take the time to read this, thank you. I've been watching your YouTube videos for about a year now, and wanted you to know my story. I'm a 17-year-old guy, and my family moved 4 times in 15 years. The first house I remember living in was an old rickety, worn-down farmhouse. We lived there until I was 8 years old. Within that house was definitely more than just one ghost. I didn't have my first encounter until I was about 5 or 6. You'll have to forgive my faded recollection. It was a long time ago. It was the first night my twin brother and I got a bunk bed. We fought over the top bunk and I won. I woke up in the middle of the night, sweaty from a nightmare. And the fact that the top bunk was always hot, I sat up and calmed down for reasons unknown. I looked out my door and saw something go into our older brother's room. His room was perpendicular to ours, so I can see the door. I couldn't make it out because I was still groggy, but it was like a white blob slid into his room. My sister said she saw a young boy in her closet when she was combing her hair. She saw him peel around the corner through the reflection of her mirror. My mom said she heard native chanting while sweeping the kitchen. This
This was when all of us kids were at school and daycare. We were eating one day. My dad had his back to the dining room window, and underneath the window was a deep freeze. Big rectangular freezer box if you didn't know. Our mom had bought a few candles the other night, since the house smelled at points at night. My twin brother Zach was having a fit about the food. He was sitting on the other end of the table, but on the left side. He started to raise hell, and one of the candles on the deep freeze flew past my dad's head and came short to hitting my brother. During our last month living there, our parents openly admitted to using a Ouija board inside the house. My dad said the remote was being thrown, and so were scissors. He didn't know what to do, so he took the board out back and burnt it. We moved across the state to a place that used to be a town but only had the house, a barn for our horses, an abandoned schoolhouse, and a church. People still went to the church, and the only thing that I feared were rattlesnakes, even though I didn't see any ever. I did find a small slab in front of a big pile of rocks and a bunch of cement. The only thing on the slab was M. This kind of freaked me out, and my mom didn't know what to think of it. About a year later, my oldest sister moved out, and my other sister took her old room. I moved into my sister's room because I didn't feel like sharing a room with Zach. I only stayed in that room for about 6 months. It was a room in the basement. The walls were cement and had chalk drawings of a target. These were already there when we moved in. Anyways, whenever I slept inside that room, it felt like someone was staring at you. A few months after that, my older brother, my older sister, Zach, and I decided to play ghost in the graveyard. My brother was it, and my sister and I hid in a bush by the garage. My sister was too cramped, so she moved. I saw her hide behind a tree that was in perfect view from my spot. I saw my brother chase after Zach. They ran from my vision left to right. Soon after, I saw a girl walk from the direction they ran. She wasn't my sister. This girl wore glasses, had pigtails or twin tails, however you call it. She was holding a few books too. She casually walked from right to my left. I believe she used to go to that schoolhouse near the church. It was the 100th anniversary of when our place was made. Turns out that it did in fact used to be a small town, but there was a fire that burnt down a lot of houses. Since there were larger towns not so far away, didn't really rebuild much of the property besides of what was there. That would explain the burnt wood in the schoolhouse. We moved to the town where we went to school when I was 11. This house was up on a hill with a big field, ideal for our horses. We didn't quite have everything moved, so my brothers and I slept in the house, while my sister and parents slept in our previous house. Zach and I still shared a room only because there weren't enough for everyone to have their own room. Anyways, our beds were just a single mattress on the floor, and they took up the majority of the room. First night we slept there, it was fine. I woke up around 7 to something moving on my blankets. It felt like someone had sat down. But I just figured it was our dog trying to get comfortable, right? Because he likes to sleep between people's legs. I moved my leg a bit, but didn't feel anything on my bed. I was kind of freaking out at this point, and I looked over my leg and saw absolutely nothing but an indent of someone had indeed sat on my mattress. I rolled over to Zach's mattress, and he has never seen me so freaking scared. We moved into our 4th house a year after. This time, it was a house in town. It used to be a bed and breakfast, a very small one. It only had 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, and a shack that was also like a room. Zach and I took a look in our room with our mom and thought it was nice. The beds were actual beds and not mattresses. We left, shut the door to move the rest of the stuff. Not 20 minutes later, we entered the room again and everything is covered in dust. The TV, the window sill, the nightstand, and even the beds. It looked like it hadn't had a proper cleaning in a decade. Before you ask, the windows and vents were not open. Other than that incident, the only abnormal thing was our vacuum cleaner tipping over at random times. When I was 15, we moved mid-state into a nice home with my dad. and which he used as a break spot whenever he'd go tricking. I currently live here now, and there hasn't been much activity. The only thing I couldn't explain was when I was about to play PlayStation, I heard someone in my room sneeze. I was home alone. True Ouija story. Hello. Now, I'm not one of those people that's gonna say that you have to believe my story. It's up to you if you choose to believe what I say. I've been listening to these stories for years now, but it's different when it happens to you. I love scary stories, horror flicks, anything that gets my heart beating with fear. Because of this, I was a very shy girl. I only really had two great friends that, in the story, we'll call Kate and Joanne. Kate had been interested in the paranormal like me, and one day she decided she'd invite us over to play with a Ouija board. Now, I love scary stuff, but I heard the stories of people who messed with the supernatural and it never ended well. So I told her I wanted no part of it. I wish I could say I still didn't come that night, but I can't. My parents have been fighting all night, and I needed some space away from the house, so I went to sleep over as my other two friends were talking to ghosts. Joanne didn't want to play with the board yet, so we sat around doing normal teenage stuff. Finally, after a couple hours, they took out the board. Again, I was too freaked out, so I just sat on the couch and watched from a distance. Kay grabbed a bunch of candles and surrounded it around the both of them, in the shape of a poorly done star. Kate smiled, and they both put their hands on the glass. I was kind of interested, I would admit, like if this would work, and watched carefully, making sure neither of them were pushing the planchette. Kate started off asking if there was anyone with them in the room. The planchette started moving to yes. Joanne looked terrified. Kate smiled and said, "Your turn." Joanne asked, "What is your name?" and then started to spell out A-N-N-E. Joanne looked at Kate and asked if she was moving the planchette. Kate shook her head. I was freaked out." "Are you a demon?" The planchette flew to yes. Kate started freaking out and asked if we could end it, but it kept saying no, no, no. I was scared as hell, and I swear to God, I saw a little girl behind Joanne with black, soulless eyes. She started screaming at the top of her lungs, then passed out. Kate turned on all the lights and blew out the candles and threw the Ouija board into the box. Kate proceeded to recite a scripture then that she read online, and it would cleanse the house of any unwanted spirits. After a few hours, Joanne woke up and started crying, wailing that she wanted to go home. That was the scariest friggin' thing that's ever happened to me. Later on, Joanne told us what she saw. Apparently, after Kate asked to end the conversation, she saw a small little girl with a giant grin on her face standing behind the couch I was sitting on. That was when she started screaming, and she stated she felt like someone had smacked her in the back of the head with something hard and she fainted. Sometimes, I swear I can see the little girl standing in the corner of my vision. Please, I am warning you, be careful playing with a Ouija board. You may use it to talk to dead family members or friends that you miss, but you don't always get the company you were hoping for. Some of my paranormal experiences, possibly demonic. Hello. I first want to start off by saying that I am an enormous fan of yours. You're awesome and not to mention adorable. Anywho, I'm not the greatest writer, so bear with me, and I am sorry for any grammatical errors. My name is Betty, I'm 26 years old, and have always been able to sense things. Not just I, but my sisters as well. My older sister, who is 6 years older than me, sees things in her dreams that come true. And my little sister, who is 2 years younger than I, can see dead entities and feel them like me as well. Anywho, with that out of the way, I was always very curious when it comes to the Ouija board. I was always told by my mother to never play it with them for obvious reasons, that you never know what door to doors you might open and who you've even been talking to anyways. Yet the curiosity got the best of me. I was doing some online research when I was around 11 or 12 years old on how to make your own Ouija board. I discovered that I can just make one out of the cardboard box that I happen to have in the basement. I was filled with adventure with just the thought of me going through with my discovery. I advised my younger sister Nona and her best friend at the time, Jonathan, if they wanted to play with the Ouija board along with me. Nona was not convinced easily. She told me she would be in the basement with Jonathan and I, but would not play. I was okay with that, just as long as I wasn't playing alone. So the day comes and I light 4 white candles around Jonathan and I. I use the shot glass as a planchette. We sit down across from each other, and I soon ask if anyone was there, and nothing. I ask once more, and nothing. And as Jonathan and I are losing our excitement, the glass moves slightly. We both freak, him more than I, and I want to continue, but he doesn't and decides to leave. He gathers his things and bolts up to the basement stairs. I then turned off the candles and just sitting on the floor debating on what to do with the Ouija board. I then decided to rip it up. I know, stupid of me. Went back out and tossed it in the dumpster. So here I continue about my merry life until I then start to notice strange occurrences. For example, I hear my name being called randomly at all hours of the day, in school, out of school, during recess, at home, etc. I start assuming I'm going nuts, but then I start hearing stranger things at home, more than just my name being called. One summer day, I was hanging out in my basement, the room where the attempted Ouija board playing all took place, and I hear footsteps coming from right outside the room. I assume it's my sisters or my parents. But once I peek out, mind you, the flight of stairs are opened up, and if someone decided to run back up the stairs, I would definitely see them and hear them, but there was no one there. Confused, I was about to turn around when I hear the footsteps about 15 feet directly in front of me. Our basement floor was cement and very widely opened. The steps sounded like someone in heels or boots. I slowly creeped closer and closer to the steps. As I finally got to the spot where the steps began, they had stopped, just like that. I was bewildered, but within a moment the steps started once more, directly in front of me. As they were pacing back and forth, literally inches in front of me, and sounded like heels or boots, I was frozen in fear and could not move my legs for the life of me. Yet I was right next to the basement steps, not even a foot away. I glanced up at my birds right next to my basement stairs, only to see them all frozen as we staring at me with one eye. What seemed like ages was most likely moments. I mustered up the courage and bolted up the stairs. Once in my room, I could not comprehend what had just happened to me. Was I imagining things? Or was this all true and real? Weeks passed, and yet I am not afraid of the basement. I was more attracted to it. More like I was being called to it. I spent most of my days in the basement, on the computer, or just hanging out. One afternoon, I was on the computer as usual when I hear a boy that hasn't hit puberty, but sounds kind of like a girl, screamed out, "Why don't you just leave me alone?" I ran out of the basement to find the source of the voice, yet I see no one in sight. Not one person. I tried to think maybe it was someone being outside and me hearing them somehow yell through the thick glass basement windows. So I rush outside and look all over the yard, and no one was home nor around. Weeks later, I had a very strange dream. One that confused the crap out of me, but has me question the history of the house. I was walking down the hallway, and we had apparently moved out. So I was walking in an empty house almost, with a few boxes laying around at the end of the hallway. The dream turns into what seems to be like the past, as if it was the 70s or something, and a little boy runs in front of me to the kitchen, the doorway to the right of me, and before I'm able to reach the side of the kitchen, I hear the boy scream in agony and pain. Yet I somehow end up walking back to my room and it's present day. As I reach my room, my father was tearing up the carpet from my room, and under the carpet was a bunch of dried up blood. And after seeing that, I wake up. Confused but curious, I hurry to tell my parents after I wake up, and my father was intrigued and wanted to pull up the carpet to see what he finds. But my mother, out of fear, refused to let him. Until this day, it remains a mystery. But this wasn't the last of my encounter. I soon learned that what was following me wasn't a little boy. We moved to a new home in a different side of the city, only to have a few more intense encounters. But I will tell you one that I believe to be the most frightening. Whatever was following seemed to get upset when I would ignore it. For example, if I heard tapping on my wall, always 3 taps, and ignored it, what would follow would be something caressing my toes or calling my name. Yet, the scariest experience in that house was on one fall night. I was lying in bed trying to sleep when the neighbor's side door light was on, and with it shining through my window, it would bother me and prevent me from sleeping. So I decided to close my shades completely. Leaving my room pitch black, I lay there, trying to fall asleep, when I feel like something jumping under my bed and thumping under me. I felt it on my back and all over the mattress, like someone maybe was trying to punch me through the mattress. I ignored it. I knew if I fed into it, it would just get stronger. Moments later, a container that holds my bobby pins, that's in an octagon shape, falls off my dresser. Mind you, it's late at night, and I'm the only one up, and this container just fell over like that, out of nowhere. Was completely about a foot away from the edge of the dresser too, so it couldn't have just rolled off like that. And this time I'm laying there stiff as a board, trying to ignore whatever this thing is. I then feel something caress my toes. I literally felt this thing's fingers touch my toes. At this time, I'm shitting bricks and tuck my whole body under my covers, minus my head, hoping whatever it is goes away and leaves me the fuck alone. Moments passed, yet it feels everlasting. I then hear the most frightening noise. I can't begin to imagine making this up or describing it, but I'll do my best to do so. So, as I lay on my back staring at the blackness of the ceiling, I suddenly hear a gargling, raspy growl to my left ear. I was petrified. What the fuck is this thing? Is it a demon? Where did it come from? What does it want from me? That's when I had enough. I jumped out of bed, ran to my oldest sister's room, and slept on her bed for the night. I couldn't even imagine what this thing looked like or even was, and I didn't want to. Even after that incident, I still hear footsteps upstairs when no one is home, and my name randomly called. But nothing tops the cake like this time. I am pretty convinced that this thing isn't nice. It's most likely demonic and probably portrayed a child to attract my attention or something. Thank you for taking the time and reading my story. I hope it's not as butchered as I think it is. A message from my mom. Before reading the story, I just wanted to let you know I originally posted my experience to a website where people can come and talk about their paranormal experiences. It's called paranormal.about.com. I did this because I felt like sharing my experience would take the weight of it off my chest, and it did. I also posted it to this website so as to not forget it. kind of like a weird diary entry. This is the story that I posted. This happened during the early weeks of June 2012 in the Poconos, Pennsylvania. Every summer break, I would visit my best friend, Nicole, who I've known since the 6th grade. This summer visit had been, to say the least, the most unusual. As soon as I arrived at her house, she explained to me that she and her father had gone to a flea market, and she found a cheap Ouija board that she would love to try out later that night. Me being a believer in aliens, spirits, ghosts, I was a bit scared to try it. In the back of my mind, I knew that this was not a good idea, but not wanting to ruin her fun or seem like a scaredy cat, I agreed to it. As night came, Nicole and I were lounging around until she asked me if I would like to try the Ouija board. She placed 8 to 10 lit candles in an oval around the Ouija board and told me to sit across from her. We placed the Ouija board between us, resting in our laps with our fingers pressed tightly on the planchette. I was a bit nervous, I'll be honest. I just didn't know what to expect. Nicole was more excited about this than I was, so she did most of the talking, asking questions like, Ouija, are you there? Ouija, are you with us? Nothing out of the ordinary seemed to be happening, which relaxed me slightly. My friend continued this approach for about 10 minutes before getting a bit frustrated and deciding that we had to be doing something wrong since nothing was happening at all. She looked online for more directions on how to correctly use a Ouija board, and it turns out we had to hold the planchette a specific way. We did as instructed, and my friend continued her questioning, Ouija, are you there? Ouija, are you with us? Now, here's where it gets weird. We start to hear noises. A distant cry could be heard. I wrote it off, thinking it could just been the TV going on in another room. Then, the curtains on her window started to rustle, the wind, I would say, but her windows weren't opened and her AC wasn't on. Then, a floorboard creaked. Okay, I thought, these are just coincidences. Then the candle to the right of me started to flicker, but just one candle. Nicole and I looked around in confusion at all the other candles, but only that one flickered. Its shadow would dim and grow, dim and grow, dim and grow until its shadow grew to an unusually big circle. Nicole continued, Ouija, are you there? All of a sudden, the planchette moved. We looked up at each other wide-eyed. Ouija, are you with us? Nicole asked again, and the planchette moved slowly but surely to yes. Ouija, how did you die? It didn't answer. How did you die? Did you die in a fire, Ouija? This time the planchette moved to no. Are you a good spirit or a bad spirit? It moved to no. Finally, Nicole asked, Ouija, who are you? Slowly, the planchette spelled out M-O-N in precise and sure movements. I remember choking out, Mom? I began to cry. My mother died when I turned 8 years old. 2 weeks after my birthday on July 31st, 2004, from a freak accident while on a hiking trip with friends. She was only 44 years old. This certainly was not my friend moving the planchette. Never in a million years would she play such a cruel prank on me. She asked me if I wanted to stop, but I told her no. I wanted to see what my mom wanted. This time, I asked the questions, while my subdued and shocked friend watched. Mom, is that you? Yes, the planchette moved. I cried. How old were you when you died? It moved towards the 4 and stayed there. How old was I? It pointed to the 8. How old was Christian when you died? Christian is my little brother, 4 years younger than I. The planchette moved to the 4. She answered all I needed to know. Even Nicole hadn't known when my mom died or how old she was, or even how old I was. I rarely ever talked about it. Then I started rambling. Mom, I miss you so much. I love you so much, I miss you. Things haven't been the same. I was a mess. I asked, do you miss me, Mom? It moved to the yes. I could just feel how much she meant it. It made my heart break. I asked her if she loved me, and the planchette stayed at the yes. I know these are silly questions to ask, but I just really wanted to hear them. I missed her so much. I don't remember how long she had been there, but I remember her saying goodbye. Afterwards, I felt relief. I felt like a weight I didn't even know was there was lifted off of my shoulders. I felt that she had been trying to contact me this whole time and finally got to. I've not talked to her since, but I will never forget that experience for as long as I live. Nicole and I have talked about it once after that, but never again. I'm just grateful for the experience. I don't advise anyone to try it though, because I was lucky enough to just have my mom contact me. You can never be too sure with Ouija boards. Be very careful if you ever use one.